Imagine a virus that doesn't even use mosquitoes. Like it completely avoids major cities and just quietly hides out in the blood of pale-throated sloths deep inside the Amazon rainforest for, I don't know, 40 years.
Yeah, just totally off the grid.
Right. It just sits there completely off the global radar until the exact day it decides to mathematically shuffle its genetics and, well, board an international flight out of Brazil.
I mean, it sounds completely absurd when you put it like that.
Yeah.
When we think of global epidemics, we're conditioned to look for highly urbanized pathogens spreading through massive crowds.
Dense populations, exactly.
Right. So the idea of an international public health crisis originating from some microscopic midge biting a really slow-moving mammal in the canopy,
Yeah.
it feels totally counterintuitive.
It sounds like a bad movie plot. But for you, the listener, and for millions of people across the Americas right now, this bizarre biological chain of events is unfortunately reality. So, welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Our mission today is to basically give you a massive shortcut. We want you to be deeply informed about this stealthy pathogen that recently hijacked global headlines, spreading from the Amazon basin into the Caribbean, the US, and even Europe.
Yeah, it really moved fast once it got going.
It really did. And to unpack this, we are extracting the core insights from a brand new, incredibly comprehensive March 2026 paper straight from the journal Nature Medicine. It's titled Transmission Dynamics of Oropouche Virus in Latin America and the Caribbean.
And, the reason this specific paper is so compelling is that it operates almost like epidemiological detective work.
Right. It's not just a list of case numbers.
Exactly. It doesn't just report current case counts. The researchers use historical blood archives, decades of climate modeling, and even regional geography to explain exactly how a virus can operate basically in the dark for decades before exploding onto the world stage.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to understand how a virus takes over the world in late 2023, we really have to start by understanding how it makes a living out in the wild.
Right, it's natural ecology.
Yeah, so we are talking about the Oropouche virus, or ORV. The paper classifies it as an arbovirus in the Orthobunya virus genus. Now, usually when we hear arbovirus, our minds immediately jump to mosquitoes, like dengue, Zika, malaria.
The usual suspect.
Exactly. They all rely on mosquitoes. But Oropouche uses a completely different vehicle, right?
It does. Its primary vector is Culicoides paranensis, which are these tiny midges. A lot of people call them no-see-ums because they are literally microscopic, often less than 2 millimeters long.
You can't even see them coming.
Exactly. And their ecology is fundamentally different from the mosquitoes that spread, say, dengue. Those urban mosquitoes, they love clean, stagnant water in cities.
Oh, right, like flower pots or old tires in backyards.
You got it. But these midges, they thrive in damp, highly forested environments.
Yeah.
They actually breed in decaying organic matter, like rotten banana stumps or cacao husks.
Wow. So instead of a highly adapted urban insect, we're dealing with a microscopic terror that breathes in jungle rot.
That's one way to put it, yeah.
And out there in the wild, what epidemiologists call the enzootic cycle, the virus isn't even looking for humans at all. It just circulates quietly between these midges and its primary hosts, which are non-human primates, and specifically those pale-throated sloths.
Which, if you think about it, is a perfect reservoir. Sloths are notoriously slow, they're heavily insulated up there in the canopy, and they're easily bitten by just clouds of these midges.
Just a sitting target.
Basically, yeah. And when a human does happen to intersect with this cycle, say, like a farmer working near the forest edge and gets bitten by an infected midge, they contract Oropouche fever.
And what does that look like?
Well, for most people, it's a febrile illness. You get a sudden really high fever, an intense headache, chills, and just severe joint pain.
But the paper outlines that it doesn't always stop at a fever. As we saw in the recent epidemic, the virus actually has the capacity to cross the blood-brain barrier.
Yeah, that's where it gets really dangerous.
Right. It can cause severe central nervous system diseases like meningitis and meningoencephalitis. And horrifyingly, we started seeing maternal-fetal complications too, right? Including miscarriages and stillbirths.
We did. It's incredibly tragic.
Which makes the next fact incredibly sobering. As of late 2025, there are 0 vaccines and 0 antiviral drugs available to treat it.
And that lack of pharmaceutical defense is exactly why understanding the pathogen's biology is just so critical. You mentioned earlier that it's an Orthobunya virus.
Yeah.
Well, that classification is highly significant because of how the virus actually stores its genetic code. The Oropouche genome is made up of 3 completely separate, single-stranded RNA segments.
Okay, so it's not all one piece.
Right. If you picture a standard virus genome as a single, long scroll of instructions, Oropouche is more like a recipe book that's been split into 3 distinct separate volumes.
Wait, so if it has separate volumes, does that mean those volumes can get mixed up if the conditions are right?
Precisely. If 2 different but closely related strains of the virus happen to infect the exact same cell in a host at the exact same time,
Oh, wow.
yeah, those 3 RNA segments get dumped into the cell together. And when the viruses start replicating and packaging themselves into new virus particles, they can accidentally grab a segment from the other strain. We call this mechanism reassortment.
That's wild. So it's essentially a genetic slot machine. Instead of waiting for slow, random mutations over thousands of years like most pathogens, Oropouche can just pull the lever and instantly swap out a third of its entire genome.
It is a massive evolutionary shortcut. Reassortment can create a completely novel strain literally overnight.
Just boom, a new virus.
Exactly. And that new strain might suddenly possess the ability to evade human immune systems, or replicate faster, or even successfully infect a brand new species of midge.
Which perfectly frames the core mystery of this paper, I think. If this virus has been, circulating out in the Amazon, swapping genes in sloths and midges since it was discovered in the 1950s, why did it suddenly break out of the jungle and go global in late 2023? Like, what actually changed?
Well, to figure that out, the researchers had to zero in on the absolute epicenter of the 2023-2024 epidemic.
Yeah.
And that was the city of Manaus.
Right. And when the virus hit Manaus, it didn't hit some small, isolated jungle outpost. It hit a sprawling, highly connected metropolis of over 2.2 million people, located right in the heart of the Brazilian Amazon.
It's a massive hub.
It really is. And the researchers, they analyzed a decade of laboratory-confirmed cases in the city, going from January 2014 through December 2024. And the baseline data showed this slow, quiet trickle of cases over the years.
Just a few here and there.
Yeah, but between December 2023 and June 2024, the numbers absolutely exploded. The incidence rate in Manaus reached 54.1 cases per 100,000 people.
Which is huge.
To contextualize that scale for you listening, it was nearly 13 times higher than the national average in Brazil at the time.
The city was essentially engulfed. And in epidemiology, when you see a sudden localized explosion of a vector-borne disease like this, the very first variable you investigate is the environment.
Naturally.
Because midges are incredibly sensitive to temperature and humidity. So the researchers tracked this metric called Index P, which mathematically combines rainfall, temperature, and vegetation data to score how suitable the environment is for midge reproduction.
And the data shows a perfect overlap, right? The wet season in the Amazonas state, which runs from December to May, scores an index P of 6.53 or higher, which is categorized as highly suitable for midges.
Right.
And it perfectly maps onto the exact months of the massive outbreak. So, 2023 must have been an unusually wet, hot year that caused a midge population explosion, right? If you look at the raw data, the wet season perfectly aligns with the massive spike in cases. How can you look at those numbers and say the climate isn't the trigger?
Well, what's fascinating here is you have to look at the historical baseline, not just the outbreak year. The researchers actually asked that exact same question. They looked at the daily climate data for 2023 and 2024 and ran a statistical comparison against the previous 9 years.
Okay, and what did they find?
What they found was that the number of highly suitable climate days in 2023 was not statistically higher than in 2015 or 2018 or 2020. The wet season in Manaus is basically always highly suitable for midges.
Wait, really? So the weather was a loaded gun, but it had been loaded for a decade. It wasn't the anomaly that pulled the trigger.
Exactly. Climate facilitated the outbreak, sure, but it did not cause it. The mathematical evidence points away from the sky and right back toward the biology. Remember that genetic slot machine we talked about?
Oh, the reassortment.
Yes. The researchers strongly hypothesized that the actual trigger was the emergence of a novel, highly virulent, reassortant viral strain. So this upgraded virus hit a dense urban population that had absolutely no immediate immunity to it. And crucially, Manaus operates as an international transit hub. So when you combine a highly fit, novel virus with an international airport, an endemic jungle pathogen suddenly becomes a global epidemic.
That is terrifying, but the introduction of a new strain into Manaus raised an even bigger question for the researchers, didn't it? Like, was this a one-off event, or had Oropouche pulled this exact trick before?
Yeah, because climate records only tell you about the midges. They don't tell you about the disease.
Right. To see what the virus had actually been doing to the human population over the decades, they had to look directly at the blood.
And so they executed a massive serosurvey. They tested over 2,000 routine blood donations in Manaus across 3 distinct periods: November 2023, June 2024, and November 2024.
And what were they looking for exactly?
They were specifically looking for IgG antibodies, which are basically the long-term memory cells of the immune system. If you have Oropouche IgG in your blood, it means you were infected at some point in the past and recovered.
Okay, and the overall trajectory of those antibodies perfectly tracked the massive wave of the epidemic, didn't it? In November 2023, right as the outbreak was ramping up, about 11.4% of the blood samples had antibodies.
Right.
By June 2024, it was up to 17.8%. And by November, it had hit 25.7%. So in a single year, the virus left its biological mark on a quarter of the entire population.
It's a massive infection rate.
But the most revealing piece of data wasn't the total number, it was the demographic divide. They looked at the thousands of blood samples from that initial November 2023 batch, and they found this massive cliff edge.
It's truly fascinating.
Yeah, if you were under 50 years old, your blood was basically clean. Only about 3% to 11% showed any antibodies. But if you were over 50, suddenly 1 in 4 people had the biological scar of this virus.
It is a stunning demographic anomaly. I
Yeah.
mean, when an entire generation of older individuals carries an antibody that the younger generation completely lacks, it means the virus swept through that population decades ago, and the younger cohort simply wasn't alive to be exposed.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's almost like counting tree rings. The blood of the older generation was acting like a biological time capsule.
Yes, exactly like that. And to pinpoint exactly when that time capsule was sealed, the researchers applied something called a serocatalytic model.
Sounds complicated.
Well, you can think of this model kind of like a series of nested sieves. If you pass the blood of a 20-year-old through the sieve and find no antibodies, but the 45-year-old's blood gets caught, and then the 50-year-old's blood gets caught at a massive rate, the mathematical model can walk backward year by year.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it analyzes the specific age at which the infection rate spikes to find the exact moment the virus watched over the population. And that math pointed a giant neon arrow at the years 1980 and 1981.
And the researchers didn't just trust the math, right? They went into the physical, historical public health archives in Brazil and looked for records from that exact era.
And they found it.
They found corroborated, documented evidence of a major Oropouche outbreak ripping through the state of Amazonas, specifically hitting Manaus between late 1980 and early 1981.
Which provides us with 2 massive revelations about how this virus operates. First, it shows an incredible multi-decade cyclicality. The estimated attack rate of that 1980 outbreak was 12.5% of the population.
Yeah.
The attack rate of the 2023-2024 outbreak was 14.3%. So we're looking at 2 practically identical epidemic waves separated by 42 years of silence.
Wow. And the second revelation has to be about the durability of human immunity, right? Because if the people infected in 1980 still had high levels of IgG antibodies in 2024, that means their immune systems remembered the virus for over 4 decades.
Not only did they remember it, they could defeat the new version of it.
Wait, really?
Yeah, the researchers proved this by running in vitro tests. They took those 1980 antibodies and put them in a petri dish with the original 1960 prototype strain of Oropouche. The antibodies successfully bound to the virus and neutralized it.
Makes sense.
But then they put those same 40-year-old antibodies in a dish with the brand new reassortant 2024 strain, and they neutralized that one too. The immunity elicited by a primary Oropouche infection is incredibly robust and highly cross-protective against mutated strains.
That's amazing. But the paper also highlights another type of antibody, IgM. So if IgG is the long-term memory that lasts for 40 years, what role is IgM playing in this dynamic?
Good question. So IgM antibodies are the first responders of the immune system. They're produced immediately during an active primary infection. And the study emphasizes that mounting a strong, rapid IgM response is absolutely crucial for controlling the initial replication of the virus in your bloodstream.
So it's about speed.
Exactly. If your IgM response is weak or delayed, the virus multiplies unchecked. And that drastically increases the likelihood of the pathogen crossing the blood-brain barrier to cause those severe neurological complications we discussed earlier. Your body essentially has a very narrow window to mount that initial defense.
Okay, so the tree ring data in the blood definitively solves the mystery of Manaus. It proves the city was hit by massive, cyclical waves decades apart. But Manaus is just one city. The Amazon basin is massive, spanning multiple countries. If this virus has the ability to pull this invisible act since 1980, it's highly improbable that it was only happening in one localized area.
Well, it definitely wasn't.
Yeah.
To understand the true geographical footprint of the virus, the researchers had to widen their scope far beyond Manaus. They synthesized 187 different seroepidemiological studies and reviewed 32 documented outbreaks spanning the entire continent from 1961 all the way to 2022.
And the numbers they extrapolated are just staggering. They estimate that there are roughly 336,000 continuous endemic infections just simmering in the Amazon basin at any given time.
Just background noise in the jungle.
Yeah, but when you factor in the major historical outbreaks over the last 60 years, their model estimates a cumulative 9.4 million Oropouche infections from 1960 to 2025.
It's an unbelievable number.
They estimate 5.5 million cases in Brazil alone, 1.7 million in Cuba, and roughly 1.1 million in Peru. I really have to wrestle with that scale for a second.
Yeah, it's hard to wrap your head around.
We are talking about nearly 10 million people infected by a virus that most of the world, and certainly most global health organizations, had barely prioritized until last year. How do you functionally miss 9.4 million cases of a disease?
Well, to answer that, the researchers looked at the physical geography of healthcare. They mapped out the surveillance capacity and the physical access to clinics in these deeply endemic areas.
And what did that show?
If you live in an endemic region of Peru, Colombia, or Venezuela, the researchers calculated that the median optimal travel time just to reach a healthcare facility is between 14 and 22.5 hours.
22 hours. So
Yeah.
you wake up with a sudden high fever, chills, and severe joint pain. And just to get a doctor to draw your blood and tell you what's wrong, you have to embark on a 22-hour journey.
Yeah, likely navigating massive, remote Amazonian river systems by boat while you are violently ill.
Oh my God.
Exactly. And the stark reality is that the vast majority of people simply are not going to make a multi-day river journey for a fever that might just resolve on its own in a week. As a direct result, the surveillance capacity index in these specific regions is exceptionally low. We're talking less than 0.22 on a scale of 0 to 1.
Wait, so if it takes up to 22 hours to see a doctor, and the paper notes that researchers hypothesize up to 80% of these infections might be entirely asymptomatic or incredibly mild, the healthcare system isn't failing to treat the virus. It literally doesn't even know it's there.
Right.
If 8 out of 10 people don't feel sick, and the 2 who do feel sick live a 20-hour boat ride from a clinic, it's a ghost.
You've hit the exact mechanism of its invisibility. The health systems cannot track the virus because the patients never intersect with the health systems.
But this raises a major contrast because we hear constantly about other tropical viruses in the Americas.
Right.
Like chikungunya causes about 5 million infections annually. Dengue is constantly in the news. Why are they so visible while Oropouche remained completely hidden?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the difference entirely comes down to the biology of the vectors and the severity of the symptoms. Chikungunya and dengue are primarily spread by Aedes mosquitoes. And as we discussed, Aedes mosquitoes are highly urbanized.
Right, they're in the cities.
Exactly. They breed in cities, which means the infections happen exactly where the hospitals and surveillance systems are located. Furthermore, when a virus like chikungunya hits, it is highly symptomatic. It causes debilitating joint pain that aggressively forces people to seek immediate medical care.
You can't just ignore it.
No, you can't. Oropouche, on the other hand, is carried by rural midges. It stays in the remote forest where access is minimal, and its high rate of mild cases keeps it completely off the radar until a mutated version hitches a ride into a major urban hub.
And the paper perfectly illustrates this contrast by looking at what happened when the virus finally broke out of the Amazon and hit the Caribbean in 2024, didn't it?
Yes, it did. In the Caribbean nations that recently experienced outbreaks, the median travel time to a healthcare facility is completely different. It is less than 10 minutes.
Wow, from 22 hours to 10 minutes.
Exactly. Because the clinics are immediately accessible, the health infrastructure detected the virus the moment it arrived. The alarm bells rang instantly because the geography of healthcare actually allowed them to see it.
It's a profound realization. So let's look at the complete picture the researchers have painted here. We have a pathogen that relies on microscopic midges and slow-moving sloths, utilizing a genetic slot machine to reassort its RNA and create highly fit novel strains.
Right.
We have biological tree rings hiding in the blood of 50-year-olds in Manaus, proving this virus operates in massive, invisible, multi-decade cycles. And through the lens of geographical healthcare access, we've uncovered an entirely hidden history of 9.4 million infections spread across Latin America over the last 60 years.
It really is an incredible piece of scientific detective work.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Well, it means that in an era of unprecedented human mobility and global travel, the concept of a local disease is a dangerous illusion. The geographical barriers that kept Oropouche isolated deep in the Amazon basin just no longer exist.
They're gone.
A virus that historically required a 22-hour river journey just to be diagnosed can now emerge from the jungle, adapt to an urban environment, board an airplane at the Manas International Airport, and be establishing local transmission in Miami or Toronto or Madrid by tomorrow morning.
And this raises an important question, Looking at the data in this paper, that mobility points to a deeply unsettling unknown about the future. If Oropouche's greatest evolutionary superpower is reassortment, its ability to rapidly swap entire segments of its genetic code when it encounters related viruses in the same host, what happens next?
Yeah, now that it's out.
Right. The virus has officially escaped the Amazon. It is currently establishing itself in entirely new ecosystems in the Caribbean and North America. It's going to encounter brand new vectors, brand new animal hosts, and entirely new related viruses that it has never shared a cell with before. When this genetic shapeshifter meets the biological reality of its new environments, the evolutionary possibilities are completely uncharted.
It brings us right back to the absurdity we started with. Only the script is writing itself in real time now, and the next act is entirely unpredictable.
Truly.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you, because as we explore today, the most profound and impactful histories aren't always written in textbooks sometimes. They're hiding right under our noses, waiting to be found in the blood of a 50-year-old donor in the Amazon. Catch you next time.